Hello and welcome to Taunton. We're here for the first day of the Tri-Series. We've got two T20 games coming up today. First up, New Zealand against South Africa, and then later on it will be England against South Africa. So, Sid, we've seen a bit of England and South Africa lately, but what's the form of New Zealand going into this first match?
Well, as people will no doubt have read, New Zealand absolutely smashed Ireland over in Ireland. So they treated that Irish tour as a warm-up coming over here, and they found things in Ireland very, very easy, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, they kind of smashed quite a few records, didn't they? So we saw that the England men's team had broken the men's ODI record yesterday, but we've had New Zealand making 490 against Ireland, and Amelia Kerr had that incredible double century where she broke Belinda Clark's record for the highest individual ODI score in women's ODIs. So that was kind of amazing. So yeah, New Zealand have had a pretty great time.
How much of a test was that really for New Zealand though, playing Ireland?
It's a good question. I mean, I was chatting to Susie Bates at the weekend, and she basically said that while that series against Ireland was really exciting for them and kind of pleasing for them, actually in terms of where the real test comes, it's against the top sides, of which I think we can include England and South Africa now really. So she knows that this is the real test for them.
Yeah, I think New Zealand's have made a bit of a habit over the years of absolutely thundering over the lesser sides and then falling short when they come into the more challenging situations or up against the more difficult sides. You know, classically in their sort of World Cup quarter-final here last year, where it was either them or India. It was still in the group stages, but it was effectively a quarter-final. Either them or India were going to go through, and New Zealand just folded at that stage. And I know that the side were very disappointed about that, because they really felt that they'd not shown the best of themselves. But I think that Susie said to you that they're really hopeful that they're getting over those disappointments and there's a new era coming.
Yeah, absolutely. That they've kind of regrouped as a squad and they've been working on that, and they're hoping that for better things, I guess. But they know that the Ireland series wasn't really the best test. And then in terms of kind of how warmed up the teams are for this series, actually arguably New Zealand are the least warmed up because they've played quite a weak opposition, whereas England and South Africa have played each other, and actually we saw that series wasn't particularly one-sided. Obviously England did kind of come through fairly comfortably in the end, but there were certainly some moments where you actually really felt that South Africa were challenging them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that England will feel they know South Africa quite well. They'll feel that they don't know New Zealand quite as well at this stage. New Zealand do seem to be making a great success of bringing on players at the moment. Amelia Kerr has really clearly come on leaps and bounds since she made her debut. I mean, she was only 15 when she made her debut. It's a couple of years ago now. But the coaching setup in New Zealand has obviously really made a difference there, because she wasn't capable of batting like that 2 years ago, and now she is. And Lee Kasperek as well has, since she made her New Zealand debut, which again only a couple of years ago, she's really definitely turned into a better player. So obviously doing something right over there in New Zealand, right, Raf?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting speaking to Susie Bates, that she was basically saying exactly that actually she feels a bit like they take 2 steps forward with pay and England and Australia take 5 steps forward. But in terms of what's happening underneath, she feels that New Zealand are actually getting it right. They are bringing on players like Amelia Kerr, and that suggests that things are going well underneath. Whereas we might question the extent to which we can say that about England really and the English system. I mean, in terms of the squad for this Tri-Series and for the ODIs against South Africa, you pointed out that it looks very, very similar to the same squad 3 years ago. Are there kind of new players coming forward and fighting to be noticed? Maybe there are a couple.
Yeah, I mean, obviously if we look at the England squad for the first couple of rounds of this series, which doesn't include Katie George, then we've only got one player, Sophie Eccleston, that's really come through in the Robinson era. Everyone else is from the pre-Robinson era. And England are definitely taking this series very seriously and quite conservatively. They really don't want to lose this series, do they?
No, absolutely. It's interesting kind of talking to Mark Robinson after that third ODI at Canterbury, and I asked him, are you going to be resting Catherine Brunner, for example? And he said no, she's going to be playing an essential role because they haven't got enough matches to just treat this as it's ultimately a friendly series. It doesn't kind of count towards anything, but all three sides will be seeing this as a way to get into form and to work with their plans out ahead of the World T20, and England are certainly looking at it like that. I think that it's going to be about Heather Knight kind of working out the bowling plans, the batting plans, who's going to do what, and it's going to be really critical in that respect. So actually in that way there's quite a lot resting on it for all three teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that from a pride point of view, all three teams will definitely want to get into that final and try and win it. They'll feel they have everything to play for because they'll be trying to lay down a marker for the World T20. So absolutely, definitely. Yeah. Obviously, we've got Tash Farrant in the squad. Yeah. We've got Katie George coming into the squad later. What do you think the likelihood is of either of them playing either today or later in the series?
I think it's more likely that we'll see them coming in later in the series. I think that England will definitely want to make the final of this, right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a commercial imperative. You'd imagine that, I'm sure they would argue they wouldn't, but you would guess that the suits at the ECB will be leaning heavily on Mark Robinson if he decides that, if he comes to them and says he wants to play an experimental team in the final match and they haven't yet qualified. They'll definitely want to make sure that England are there so that they get the people rocking up at Chelmsford and turn that into a big event. So
so today and
they won't
Saturday,
take any risks.
I think that they'll play their kind of, that we'll be seeing a very similar team to what we saw in the ODIs, I would think.
Do we think they'll change the batting order? Do you think
absolutely,
that Waggy will be back at the top of the order?
Will be opening in T20s, no doubt about that, I think. It'll be interesting to see who he selects to open alongside her, I suppose.
Amy Jones, Tammy Beaumont?
Yeah. I suppose Amy Jones I see as more suited to the longer forms of the game, but maybe that's unfair. What do you think?
I think she definitely can play at this level of the game, and a couple of the warm-ups she's played in the T20s. So I think there's a reasonable chance, and I think that.
Yeah, although Tammy Beaumont's just made a century.
Yeah, that's true as well. But I go back to what I said before the other games, that I think that Tammy Beaumont has the capacity to bat further down. I think that Tammy Beaumont doesn't need to be in a particular position anymore. She's in such good form that she'll bat well wherever she is, I think. Whereas I still think that we want to try and create a situation, and Mark Robinson wants to try and create a situation where he takes the pressure off Amy Jones, and opening does that, potentially, because she hasn't got to sit there and worry about coming in, and she's coming in at the least pressured point in the T20 game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does with that. But I do think that Tash Farrant and Katie George might not get a chance today or Saturday. It might be later on in the series.
Okay. So what about predictions for the series, Raf? Who do we think that will make the final?
I think probably England and New Zealand will be the teams in the final. While South Africa have come on massively in the last couple of years, and there's no doubt about that, I still think that England and New Zealand, particularly with the bat, have got the firepower that you need in T20. I mean, there's no arguing with the fact that in any T20 11 in the world, most of the New Zealand top order would walk into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd agree with that. I mean, it's going to be very much a contest between bat and ball when people are playing against South Africa. South Africa have got such a strong bowling attack. New Zealand have got a fantastic batting lineup, and as we said the other day, England's batting lineup is very strong at the moment, perhaps stronger than their bowling. And in T20, it generally seems to be the case increasingly that the women's game is following the path where the men's game has already gone, where it really is a batsman's game. So the teams with the big batsmen, like New Zealand and England, are the ones that you would expect to see coming out on top. But that doesn't mean that South Africa, aren't going to be competitive, because they absolutely are. That Lizelle Lee has the ability to win any of these games by herself, especially if the South African bowlers can make inroads. They can, if they can damage a team up front and get them on the back foot. Team posts a reasonably low total, 140, 150. That's the kind of thing where Lizelle Lee can get you halfway there in 7 or 8 overs. So don't write off South Africa, absolutely.
No. So okay, so what's your prediction for the final then, Sue?
I agree. I think that we'll be seeing England and New Zealand in Chelmsford in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay.